The wine glass shattered before anyone in that ballroom understood why Commander Daniel Cross had gone rigid where he stood. Moments earlier, my younger sister had been giggling at his side beneath a canopy of white roses and golden string lights. Then, without warning, the flute slipped from his fingers, burst against the polished marble, and sprayed pale liquid across the hem of her wedding gown. My father had just called me a coward, not quietly, not by accident, but straight into a microphone in front of 80 guests, 3 local journalists, Daniel's decorated naval relatives, and every affluent friend my sister had spent years cultivating. "Don't let the uniform fool you," Victor Bennett declared, grinning as if sharing an amusing family anecdote. "Nora abandoned her people when they needed her most. The Air Force cast her aside, and now she shows up pretending to belong among honorable officers." A handful of guests chuckled because my father was laughing. My sister Camille concealed her smirk behind a champagne flute. Daniel didn't laugh. He walked toward me across the ballroom floor with the deliberate, careful gait of someone approaching a live bomb. He extended his hand, perhaps out of politeness, perhaps because something about the way I was standing had already told him my father's version of events didn't add up. When his fingers wrapped around mine, the sleeve of my black blazer slid back, revealing the scar circling my wrist. Pale, twisted, uneven, left behind by braided aircraft cable during a rescue operation no civilian in that room had any business knowing about. Daniel's grip went rigid, his breathing stopped, his gaze lifted to meet mine. "Ma'am," he murmured, "were you Night Lantern?" The orchestra stumbled. Somewhere behind us, a violin bow dropped. My father froze, microphone still raised. Camille's smile vanished. I said nothing at all. I didn't need to. Resting beside my chair was a leather case containing a sealed Air Force file, a letter written by my late mother, and enough financial proof to unravel every lie my father had constructed about who I was. Victor Bennett believed he was shaming the daughter who'd come home carrying nothing but a duffel bag and driving a beat-up truck. He had no idea what was coming. I was raised in Harbor Point, Oregon, a coastal fishing town where salt crusted white along porch rails, and everyone knew a family's net worth before they knew its surname. My father ran Bennett Marine Supply, the town's largest private employer, selling engines, navigation equipment, and commercial rigging to fishing fleets stretching from Portland down into Northern California. His photograph hung on charity banners, business award walls, and inside the local Veterans Hall, despite never having served a day in uniform. My earliest memory of understanding the imbalance between us came at 9 years old. The kitchen smelled of cinnamon toast and the seawater clinging to my father's coat. I'd brought home a blue ribbon from a regional math competition. My mother, Elise, taped it to the fridge with a small, lighthouse-shaped magnet. My father glanced at it once, then Camille walked in wearing a sequined dance costume, and he immediately grabbed his camera. "Move your paper," he told me. "It's blocking the light." That ribbon eventually ended up buried under a grocery list. At 13, I built a working emergency beacon for my school's science fair, cobbling it together from salvaged radio components, a bicycle battery, and a cracked marine transmitter one of my father's mechanics had tossed out. It took first place and earned me a spot at a state engineering camp. My father refused to sign the permission slip. "Camille has a pageant that same week," he said. "Your mother can't be in 2 places at once." My mother signed it herself after midnight while he slept, then drove me 4 hours through pouring rain and waited in the parking lot the entire time. When I came out clutching my certificate, she took both my hands in hers and told me, "You notice things other people overlook. Never apologize for that." Her love was quiet because loud affection only made him angry. She tucked college brochures inside old cookbooks and warmed my mittens on the radiator before I trudged to school in winter. Camille received the loud, visible love. New dresses, birthday getaways, a horse she abandoned within 6 months. What I got was the practical love of a woman who suspected she wouldn't always be around. She passed away when I was 17. Cancer had worn her voice down to a whisper by the end. The hospital room reeked of antiseptic and lavender lotion. My father took business calls by the window while Camille scrolled through her phone. My mother asked everyone else to step out. From beneath her blanket, she pulled a small brass key and pressed it into my palm. "For when you stop asking for permission," she told me. I asked what it opened. She simply folded my fingers over it. "You'll know," she said. She died before the sun rose. after the funeral, my father took charge of everything, locking her desk, selling her car, stripping her photographs from the walls because, in his words, grief made the house look weak. 2 months later, Camille got a brand new convertible. That same week, the savings account I'd built over 3 years working at the Harbor Diner vanished entirely. I'd scrubbed grease off plates and hauled trays through rooms thick with fried fish smell until midnight, saving for college. My father told me the account had gone toward family priorities. Camille's shiny new car sat gleaming in the driveway behind him as he said it. I didn't confront him, not out of fear, and not because I believed his excuse, but because I finally grasped how our household actually worked. My future was negotiable. Her comfort was untouchable. 6 weeks afterward, an Air Force ROTC scholarship letter arrived in a plain white envelope. My father read it aloud at breakfast and laughed. "So the military is willing to take you in," he said. "Guess someone finally found a use for your stubborn streak." I folded that letter, tucked my mother's brass key into my pocket, and stopped hoping he'd ever become the father I needed. I left Harbor Point with 2 uniforms, a single suitcase, and $38 to my name. The Air Force didn't care who had been loved more growing up. It cared whether I could keep thinking clearly while exhausted and hold my hands steady when someone else's life depended on them. I trained as a combat rescue officer. My teams went into places others were ordered to stay away from. During my first deployment, desert heat in western Iraq scorched through my gloves and pressed against the helicopter's frame. Sand forced its way past my goggles. Rotor wash churned the ground into a swirling wall of grit, fuel vapor, and shattered rock. We'd been sent to pull 2 pilots from a crashed aircraft near a village already ringed by hostile gunmen. One pilot was pinned beneath a buckled section of fuselage while bullets sparked off the metal around my sleeves. A technician shouted that hydraulic fluid was catching fire. I crawled under the wreckage anyway, metal pressed into my spine. The pilot's breathing had turned wet and shallow. I sliced through his harness, planted a boot against a strut, and hauled until he broke free. Captain Malcolm Reyes, our flight surgeon, met us aboard the helicopter and studied the burns across my gloves and the blood under my fingernails. "You went back in after the fuel caught," he said. He was still alive. Malcolm looked at me a moment longer before answering his own question. "That's the only reason you'll ever need." He became the second person after my mother who understood I didn't need to be praised. I needed my work to count for something. 3 years later, during Operation Glass Harbor, a joint task force found itself trapped inside a communications facility that had collapsed in on itself after an explosion folded 2 concrete floors together. Fire crept through the lower hallways. The main extraction winch failed when debris sheared the hydraulic line. Command ordered a withdrawal before the roof gave out entirely, but 6 operators remained trapped inside. I located a length of manual aircraft cable buried under twisted steel. It was too heavy to shift with damaged gloves, so I looped it around my forearm and pulled. The braided wire sliced through leather, then through skin, reaching bone before the pain even registered. I anchored the cable to a support column and used a damaged utility vehicle to drag the first slab clear so my team could crawl beneath it. All 6 men made it out before the eastern wall came down. The last one out was Navy Chief Owen Cross, who'd carried 2 injured men despite a shattered leg. I had no idea at the time that he was Daniel's uncle. The mission stayed classified because local informants had helped us reach the site. The Air Force put me up for a major decoration. I turned down the public ceremony and accepted the citation privately, in a secure office with 4 witnesses present. Among rescue crews, the mission lived on as a story attached to a single call sign. Night Lantern, the officer who went back into the darkness after the evacuation order and brought 6 lives out with her. My own family knew none of this. They never asked. My father told everyone in Harbor Point I'd been discharged for abandoning my post. Camille repeated the story whenever my name threatened to interrupt whichever version she preferred that day. I found out about the rumor from an old classmate while stationed overseas. The message landed on my 31st birthday. No card from my father, no call from Camille, just a screenshot accusing me of desertion. red beneath a concrete bunker while rain hammered the roof above. It was nothing next to incoming fire. That didn't mean it left no mark. I came back to Harbor Point 2 days before Camille's engagement party because a legal notice had been mailed to my base. My father was petitioning the county court to award my late mother's remaining trust entirely to Camille, claiming I'd abandoned the family, vanished without contact, and forfeited any claim to the estate. The petition stated, under oath, that I'd been dishonorably discharged from military service. I drove home in an old dark green truck with a cracked dashboard, carrying a single canvas duffel bag. Fog hung low over the coastal highway. The White House faced the same ocean my mother had loved. My father stood on the porch in a cashmere sweater. No hug. He simply pointed toward the narrow path beside the garage. "Use the side entrance," he said. "Camille's guests will be arriving soon, and your boots are filthy." I circled the house in silence. Inside, the kitchen smelled of lemon cleaner and roasted garlic. Camille stood at the marble island in a cream-colored dress, a diamond flashing on her finger beneath the pendant lighting. She hugged me carefully, keeping her dress from brushing mine. "Daniel's family thinks we're respectable," she whispered. "Don't bring up deployments. Don't mention money. Sit wherever Dad puts you and try not to make that face." "What face?" "The one that makes people uncomfortable." I stared at her until she stepped back. My old bedroom had been converted into a dressing room. Designer shoes lined the wall where my mother used to mark my height in pencil. Near the closet floor, I spotted a small brass keyhole set into the base of the original window seat. My mother's key turned easily. Inside sat a metal document box. I didn't open it right away. "You clear the room before you touch the objective." I carried the box into the bathroom, locked the door, and lifted the lid. Bank statements showed my father had emptied my college savings. The original trust agreement named Camille and me as equal beneficiaries. Copies of transfers showed money moving from the trust into Bennett Marine Supply during years the business had nearly gone under. At the bottom sat a sealed envelope addressed to me in my mother's handwriting. I packed everything into my leather case. No anger, no outburst, no wasted motion. That evening, my father seated me by the swinging kitchen door while Daniel's parents sat near the center of the table. Throughout dinner, he described Camille as loyal, disciplined, dependable. "Unlike some people," he added, cutting into his steak. When one of Camille's friends asked whether I still served, my father answered before I could. "She was let go. Couldn't handle the pressure." Daniel set down his fork. His eyes moved over my posture, my hands, the scar tracing my jaw. He said nothing yet, just watched. The next afternoon, Camille had me carrying coats and makeup for photos on the bluff behind the house while cold wind tore through the dry grass and the Pacific pounded the rocks below with a steady, heavy rhythm. Daniel approached while Camille argued with the photographer. "Were you ever assigned to the 24th Special Tactics Squadron?" he asked. "I've been assigned to a lot of units. Operation Glass Harbor?" I shifted the bag on my shoulder. "You're asking for information you don't have clearance for." He almost smiled. A gust caught my sleeve, and his eyes landed on the cable scar. Before he could say more, my Aunt Lydia came up the path complaining about the cold. "Victor ought to be ashamed of himself," she muttered, hiding Nora's Air Force medal in the attic while telling the whole town she ran off. Camille spun toward her. Daniel looked at me. Something in the air shifted. That night, perfume and expensive wine filled the house. One of my father's business partners cornered me near the windows. "You should leave," he said. "Your presence is embarrassing this family," and reached for my shoulder. Daniel stepped between us. My father rushed over, not to defend me, but to smooth things over with his guest. He laughed, patted the man's arm, then took the microphone from the band leader. That's when he made his announcement, calling me a deserter, saying I'd been thrown out, telling Daniel that marrying into this family meant joining people who still believed in honor, despite the burden of an irresponsible older daughter. Each sentence landed louder than the last. My reaction stayed small. I rested one hand on the leather case beside my chair, nothing else. Daniel crossed the room and reached for my hand, his fingers grazing the scar. "Were you Night Lantern?" he asked again. My father scoffed into the microphone. "She was a supply clerk." Daniel turned to face him slowly. "What exactly do you know about Operation Glass Harbor?" I know my own daughter. No, I said. You know the story you've been telling. 5 words. That was all it took. Daniel called out for Master Chief Owen Cross. An older man stepped away from the fireplace, leaning on a black cane, one side of his face marked by the pale sheen of healed burn scars, his left leg moving stiffly beneath formal trousers. He stopped in front of me, studying my wrist for several long seconds. Then his cane slipped from his grip and hit the floor. He didn't bend to retrieve it. Instead, he straightened as far as his body allowed and saluted. "Major Bennett," he said, "I've waited 7 years to do that." The room went silent. Daniel came to attention beside him. 2 more naval officers followed suit. Owen turned to face the guest. Glass Harbor wasn't a retreat, he said. It was a structural collapse under hostile fire. 6 of us were trapped after the evacuation order went out. Major Nora Bennett stayed behind when every passing second raised the odds she'd die alongside us. She tore her own arm open, dragging a manual cable through fire and collapsed concrete. I'm alive because she refused to walk away. My father's microphone dropped lower. Camille's champagne glass trembled against her teeth. Owen kept going. The mission stayed classified to protect the civilians who helped our task force reach that site. Her silence protected lives. Your accusations attacked the very reason she couldn't defend herself in public. Daniel pulled the engagement ring from his pocket and set it on the nearest table. Camille stared at it. "What are you doing?" she whispered. "Correcting a mistake," he said. "This is my night," she insisted. Daniel gently peeled her hand off his sleeve. "No, this was your test." My father stepped forward, his composure starting to crack at the edges. "Everyone just needs to calm down. Nora has always been dramatic. Whatever happened overseas has nothing to do with this family's business." He pointed at my leather case. "And she showed up here with stolen documents. I've already called the sheriff. She's trying to extort me over an inheritance she walked away from." The front door opened. A county deputy walked in alongside Malcolm Reyes, now a colonel, and attorney Sarah Kim from the Air Force's legal office. My father had made that call himself, expecting a uniform to intimidate me. Instead, they'd already reviewed his sworn petition before ever arriving. Sarah took the leather case from my hands. The brass clasp popped open with 2 quiet clicks. My father kept talking, describing me as unstable, vindictive, dangerous, insisting the documents inside belonged to his company. "Mr. Bennett," Sarah said, "your petition claims Major Bennett was dishonorably discharged 6 years ago." My father looked at the oak leaf insignia on my uniform for what seemed like the first time. His mouth opened, then stopped. Sarah continued. "She is currently on active duty. Your statement is false. The records attached to your petition are fabricated. These trust documents show unauthorized transfers into your company, and the signature approving them belongs to neither beneficiary." The deputy stopped writing. My father's thumb rubbed nervously along the edge of the microphone. Camille took a step away from him. The main reveal was finished. His public narrative had crumbled under official paperwork. Sarah reached into the case once more and produced the sealed envelope from my mother. I broke the wax seal and unfolded the letter, her handwriting leaning slightly rightward, exactly as I remembered it. I read in silence while the party disintegrated around me. She had discovered the missing college fund before her illness turned terminal. She'd built the locked box because she suspected my father would try to destroy the evidence. She'd also moved her remaining ownership stake in Bennett Marine Supply into a protected trust, split evenly between her 2 daughters, with one condition. Any beneficiary who knowingly helped conceal theft from the other would forfeit her share. Attached was a letter Camille had written at 19, thanking our father for spending Nora's wasted college money to stock the first inventory for her boutique. Camille saw her own signature and her knees buckled slightly. "No," she whispered. My father looked at her, panic showing openly on his face. The business empire he'd claimed as his private kingdom had been partly financed with stolen trust funds. My mother's ownership share, grown over years of accumulated value, now belonged to me alone. They'd assumed I'd arrived with nothing. One bag, one truck, one worn-out jacket. I was standing on proof buried right beneath their feet. My father moved toward me. Nora, listen. We can handle this privately. Family shouldn't destroy family over paperwork. I closed my mother's letter. You're the one who made it paperwork. His hand dropped to his side. There was no dramatic confession, no apology, just a series of small collapses. His shoulders sagging, his voice losing volume, his eyes drifting towards guests who no longer wanted to be seen standing near him. Camille sank into a chair, staring at the abandoned ring. Daniel's family left without a word to her. Reporters trailed after my father in